we've got some slides up. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for that, Katrina. I am an employee expert. I specialise in helping small businesses create exceptional business performance through their people. Think employment contracts, policies, recruitment, and terminations. I'm great at helping business owners who have limited time and money hire great people, and just as importantly, as Katrina just had to do, fire their non-performers. You can't afford them. That doesn't like me, that speaker. I will stay away from there. So, I know that being in small business is exceptionally difficult. Not only do you have to be an expert in your core skill, but you also have to understand marketing, finance, IT, social media, legal, and everything else. And you have to be an employee expert on top of all of that. And that's incredibly difficult. And it's even further complicated when you get employees. And I know this because I'm also a small business owner. I also have 10 employees, and this is my core skill, and I know how hard it is. And this is the stuff I do every day. So what I wanted to do this afternoon, and we've got a bit of time, and I'm hoping some of those people in the back out there actually come in and join us, because I know this session could save you up to $54,000 for a start, and I think most people would like some of that. But in order for me to be able to really tailor my talk to you this afternoon, we've got about 45 minutes, and including some Q&A time, I'm going to ask you to do an old-fashioned hands-up poll. Now, what I will say is I actually sat in on Adam's, and I thought Adam's talk was absolutely excellent, but I actually thought we could do a lot better when we started to talk about putting our hands up. Do you think you guys can improve? Because I saw a few little hands like this. Not good enough. I know I've got you after lunch. I know the tummy's full and everybody's feeling really tired, but I will guarantee I will actually get you up and do more things if you don't put your hand up. So, everyone can put their hand up. There's nobody who can't. Oh, good. We've got a few early starters. Oh, you're practicing. Practice. So, I want you to put your hand up if you have under 5 employees. Under 5. That's what I thought. Most people in the room. Put your hand up if you've got between 6 and 14. A few more. Who's got over 15? Couple. All right, 15's a magic number, need to remember that. Who hasn't got any employees, but actually wants some? Yeah, a few more of those too. That's really helpful, and that will help me tailor the speech for you this afternoon. So, look, employees are complex things, and I want to help you understand your employee obligations a little bit better, so that's going to help me do that. So let's get started. This is the warning slide. This is a little one about my style. I actually love HR and employee relations. Sad, I know. I get very excited about it, and I really enjoy this topic. And I want to make this session as interactive as possible so you guys get the most value out of it. You guys have given up a day at work. Yes, you're getting some education, but if you don't walk out of this room much more enriched than when you were this afternoon, you've wasted a day off work. So I'd really encourage you to get a lot out of it. The third one here is I'm going to use some technical terms. Pull me up on those if you don't understand them. As I said, we've got some time for Q&A in the end, and we'll go through some stuff. And it's going to be fast-paced. This topic is endless, and I only have a little time today to touch on a few things, but I am around all afternoon, and I am coming tonight. So if you want to grab me afterwards to ask me some other questions, I'm more than happy to do that. So let's get started. So, about 10 years ago, I took a secondment to India to be their interim HR manager while they were finding a local resource. And that was a really exciting thing. I took off to India, Bangalore, and I was filled with excitement and anticipation about my exotic location. I'd never been to India before. But I had no idea what I was actually getting myself in for. That wasn't too far from our office, it looked like that. They were hiring 500 people, 500 in 5 weeks. They were also starting within that 5 weeks. So it was an incredibly fast-paced, incredible thing to be going down there to do. And when I went down there, I arrived and actually no one knew I was coming. I didn't see my boss for 3.5 weeks. So there was no orientation, there was no briefing, there was just a desk, and I was lucky to get that with the other 500 people that were arriving. And so I had to make it up until I worked it out. So have you heard that thing, fake it till you make it? Well, that's what I was actually doing. I was faking it until I made it. And so I thought, what am I going to do? I've got a desk. No one's told me what I have to do. I know what a HR manager normally does, but I'm really out of my comfort zone here. And so I went and found who the managers in that department were. Who was I looking after? And so we started weekly management meetings and we started to find out what some of the problems were. And we just started to fix stuff. Getting people paid was a major issue. Then what would happen is the parents would get ill, and in the Indian culture, if somebody gets sick, the oldest boy goes home to look after them. So we had boys leaving all over the place, go home and look after mum and dad. But on top of that, we then had SARS, for those of you who remember when it was SARS broke out. And then we had chickenpox. And in India, guess what? Most of the population aren't inoculated against chickenpox. We had the potential of wiping out half the workforce overnight. And so we were doing a whole lot of risk assessment there. And what I found was probably one of the funniest things is I had a team of 5 and none of them had ever worked for a woman before. Ever. Sachin thought this was most novel, was his way of saying it, and I'm still connected to him on LinkedIn. But he thought it was really unusual, and they thought they were really cool because they'd actually got to work for a woman. But I did have one thing in common with them, and that was we were all going to get married within the next year. And they were all going to be married within the year to someone they were yet to meet. And one of the girls in the team was actually going to be married to someone she actually met on her wedding day. And by the same token, I had agreed the night before I left London to marry a man I'd been dating for 3 weeks. And I was going to be married within the year too. So the good news is that we've been married for 12 years, we have 3 children, and we work in employee matters together. So an incredible experience, and I think, Bangalore will always have a special place in my heart, and it was just chaotic. So I want to talk to you about your entrepreneur's journey, your business journey. Now, I know that being a business owner is incredibly tough, and I suspect that most of the people in this room, if we had to put our hands up, but I won't make you do it this time, and actually admit whether it'd be easier just some weeks to just cash a check, to go back to being an employee, it would be so much easier. And it's a tough gig being an employee, being a business owner. So I have to share with you, this is not my IP, this is the IP of Sherlaw's. And if you're interested in this slide, they have a fabulous little test you can do on their website, but I have their permission to share it with you today. So let's talk you through this. First of all is the startup phase. This phase is where you're earning up to $50,000 a year. In many cases, you don't earn anything. I know when my husband and I started Employee Matters, for 6 months, we didn't draw a wage, and that was incredibly difficult when you have 3 children under 6 and a mortgage. We actually sold a brand new Kia Carnival that we just got in order to keep us going. But it was also a time filled with incredible excitement and I suppose enthusiasm for what we were doing and what we were creating, but also incredible naivety. You don't know what you don't know. And I would actually go so far as to suggest that if you knew what you knew, you probably wouldn't start a business because it's too terrifying. So that's startup phase. The second phase, which is very interesting, 70% of businesses fall into struggle zone. And struggle zone is where you earn between $50,000 and $300,000. Now, at this time, you're not having a lot of fun. You have no money, no time, and no resources. And I was really surprised. And I think what I loved about this slide was it made me feel okay because, you know what? It was okay to feel how I felt when I was in struggle zone because that's normal for my level of maturity in my business and what I was turning over. You then move into the lifestyle phase. This is a bit more fun in lifestyle. You're earning up to $2 million. There's 20% of Australian businesses in this area. There's a bit more liquidity. There's a bit more fun. You actually get to eat something other than mince every night. And it gets a bit easier. But then guess what? You go into struggle zone too. I bet most of the people in this room think by the time you got over 2 million, hey, this is easy street, but it's not. You actually go through another growth phase and you go through a lot of growing pains. Your business seems to take everything out of you. You're always fighting fires and it's not a lot of fun. If that goes well, then you can actually move into the final stage, which is the performance zone, which is where only 4% of Australian businesses are, and they're turning over $50 million plus a year. So I think that's really, really important to think about where you guys are. So I'd like you to put your hands up. I suspect most people are either in struggle zone 1 or lifestyle. Would that be fair to say? Put your hand up if you're in either of those groups. Hands up. Great. The struggle zone, not so fun. Lifestyle, bit more fun. So let me get on with it, and I want to help you take the mystery out of your employees and the struggle out of struggle zone. So when I started my business, I had to find a way to communicate what HR was or what employees were. And I remember standing up in front of an audience of 50 of my target clients, and I stood up and I said, I'm a HR expert, or I'm a HR person or a consultant. They all looked at me blankly and they said, what is that? And I said, well, you know, I do HR. I've been doing it for top consulting firms. And they said, we don't have HR problems, but we do have employee problems. And at the time, I actually called my team, corporate land, I called them HR business partners like we did in corporate land. But when I changed my language and I started calling them employee experts, everybody got it. When I got up here and said, I'm an employee expert, you know what I do. I help you with your employee headaches. So that's what I do. So what I did was develop a 9-step employee life cycle to help you take your employees from hire to potentially fire and everything in between. So I want to run through this slide because I think for a lot of you, this would be fairly new. You sort of know some of it intrinsically, but there's more to it than that. So the first step is assess. This is where you determine whether you are compliant with all your employment legislation. It's a really important piece. There are some significant fines for breaches, as I said, for those people out there, and I'll tell you guys, because you guys are in here. If you breach your Fair Work Act or your Modern Award, and you're probably all covered by a Modern Award in this business, it's a $54,000 fine per breach. Per breach. So it's really important that you actually understand whether you're compliant. The second step there is hire. Do you know what type of employees? If anyone's got any independent contractors working for them, come and see me because that's a high-risk area. The next one is manage. So how do you manage your employees? How do you manage them to get optimal performance? You're paying these guys a lot of money. Are you happy with 70% or do you want 100% out of them? The fourth step there is policy. This is around what policies do you need in your business. There are certain amounts of legislation that you must be compliant with. So you need to understand that. And then the next stage there is well-being, workplace health and safety. Tip, everybody in this auditorium needs to have a workplace health and safety policy. A lot of people in Australia think it's only for blue collar, but actually as a white collar business, you must have a workplace health and safety policy, a risk register, and also an incident register. Step 6 is training. This is where you can massively reduce your risk. One of the best ways we say to our clients is have policies and tell your employees once a year, we're just going to run through the policies of the business. And then get them to sign a little form at the end of the lunch that says, I agree to abide, I hereby agree, I have read, understood and agreed to abide by the policies of the business. Signed here, George. Because if you ever have any problems with George, you'll be able to say, George, you know what sexual harassment and what it is and what it isn't. You can't put your hand on Natasha's leg, even though she might have enjoyed it. You can't do that because it's sexual harassment. And then Fair Work, or they will come after George rather than you as the business owner. Right, engage. This is my favourite section. And I often say the green is the compliance side, the blue is best practice. Engagement is the measure of discretionary effort. So how much are your employees willing to go above and beyond for you? When it's 6 o'clock on a Friday night and you've got to get something out and they're happy to stay there until 11 o'clock because they love you and they want to work for you and they're on the bus with you and they agree with you. Do you know that in business, if your employees have engagement levels on average across the business of 75% and above, you will get 21% more productivity and 20% more profitability. Now, who doesn't want some of that? I think everyone here does. And that's compared to the bottom 25%. We've got measure. I can save you probably a couple of $1,000s a minimum in terms of some of your employee costs. Just understanding what your employees are costing you, what your attrition rates are, what's a decent attrition rate, what's horrendous. 45% is too high. You don't want that. And it costs you between 50 and 150% of a salary to bring someone on their base salary. And the last one's exit. How do you exit somebody successfully from your business? Both your non-performers and your performers. Because sometimes you want people to come back to you. And I would encourage you to do that exit really well. So what I want to focus on today is how you grow your businesses faster than ever before through your employees. So we're going to focus on hiring better, managing better, and if required, firing better. I love this slide. There is nothing, and I say nothing, soft and fluffy about HR. I worked in corporate for many years, and they used to think HR was very soft and fluffy. And at one of the professional consulting firms, they had a change management area, which typically attracted all the psych and the HR degrees, and they used to call them chicks with slides. Totally un-PC. That was a long time ago. We don't do that anymore. But there's nothing soft and fluffy about HR, and let me share a couple of experiences with you. So there was the time, stockbroking, where one girl made a very poor choice and she decided to have sex with one of the dealers in the stairwell after Friday night drinks and was forever known after that as Mrs. Bannister. Now, unfortunate for her, because her career was ruined, he was a rocket. You know, he was bigger than anything. So negative stuff. The second thing was when we had a client just recently who rang me up and he said, I've just had $10,000 stolen from the safe. The camera's been moved, so it used to focus on the safe, it doesn't now. I've just had a resignation too of my administration manager who actually sits in the office with the safe. And I've just received an email for $45,000 in back pay entitlements for annual leave, sick leave and long service leave. What can I do about that? There was a case where we had a girl who was bashed by her partner. She left her partner. He was arrested. She went back to her partner when he got out of jail, and then she left us. There was a time, and this only happened 2 weeks ago, when one of my clients rang me and said, one of our guys has threatened to kill one of our suppliers. Literally kill. He had to be physically restrained. There was another time when a boss got punched in the head by his employee in front of a huge crowd. So you get my drift. This is stuff that happens in the world of HR and employees all the time. And I think you thought maybe being a broker was pretty exciting. I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this area. People do strange things. People are people. And your employees have the ability to either make or break your business. And it can be a really positive experience or it can be a really negative, but you need to get better at this in order for it to be a really positive one. So what are your employee problems? MYOB do a survey every year and they say, what are the things that keep small business owners awake at night? Can anyone guess what they are? What was that? Cost. Cash flow is actually what they say. And what's the number 2? And they alternate each year. Employees is number 2. So cash flow and employees every single year. And if I asked everyone in this auditorium whether they had an employee issue over the last 5 years, I think everyone would put their hand up. You all know it happens all the time. So why is it such a problem? Well, the reason being is it's not your core skill. And there's a lot of instances where small business owners are struggling. They don't understand the legislation. They don't have time to work it out. They don't have the core knowledge. And to be honest, there's a little bit of a hope. I've hired a body. I've put it on a seat. Would you just do what I wanted you to do? You know, you are going to learn through osmosis. That's what's happening here. But essentially what the thing is, and this is what I've realised over the past couple of years, employers have 3 key problems. 1, they don't understand how to fire people well. They don't understand the legislation and they hate having that difficult conversation. No one likes that. Katrina just talked about it. She didn't know whether she needed a priest or a counsellor. The second major problem for you as business owners is you don't need full-time help with your employees, but you do need help at times, and you don't understand the legislation and you struggle to be legally compliant. And the third problem for business owners is that you don't know how to hire the best employees, and if you don't know how to hire the best, how can you get maximum business performance? And how are you able to maximize your business performance? And if you don't hire the best, you end up all the way back at the firing line again. Now, I get very cross because I think in many ways, small business owners, your employees are often going to be one of your most expensive costs. It is a lever in your business. You need to understand how to pull and push that lever so that you get the most out of those employees that are costing you a fortune. I'm talking too much. Bear with me. Sorry. It's called being a mother. So, employees can be a real issue for you. Hey, what a time to lose my voice. Let's go on. Let's talk about the future place. So, I would suggest the one thing you need to take away from today is that you need to get your compliance in order. And unfortunately, as much as you would all like me to say otherwise, ignorance isn't a defence. One of the things I'm going to chat to you briefly about this afternoon is firing non-performers. And essentially what happens with that is you can get a fine of up to 6 months' salary of the individual if you fire them illegally. So you need to get this right. You don't want to have any employee breaches. When Fair Work came out in the 1st of January 2010, they were really lenient. Fair Work would say, what's your name? Carol. They would say, Carol, you're not compliant with your Fair Work Act. We're going to come back in 2 weeks, get it all sorted. If you need some help, we'll give you some help, and then we'll be fine. And if we came back to Carol in 2 weeks, Fair Work would say, that's all fine, we're going away now, see you later. The reality is that now it's almost been in 7 years and they're losing their patience, and they are throwing out fines. You'll have seen some very high-profile cases at the moment with 7-Eleven and a few others. So you need to hire great people to get in your future place. You need to have a happy and productive team that like to come to work. You need to know how to fire someone without getting sued. It's a skill for you as a business owner that you must get better at. So, what are the 3 things you need to know how to do? Who's planning on hiring anyone next year? Not anymore. Yes. I can understand that. So if you're planning on hiring people, the reason why you normally know it's time to hire is 2 ways. One is your gut tells you it's the right way. You just have that feeling that something, you need more hands and legs, or arms and legs. And the second reason is that mistakes start to happen because resources are stretched too far. And they're the 2 reasons. I've got a fabulous little activity that we don't have time to go through that will help you, especially if you're on your own, for those ones who are thinking about hiring, that will help you understand your timing and what to get them to do. But we don't have time to go through that today. The second thing that you need to understand how to hire when you're going to hire better is sourcing channels. In the good old days, you'd put an ad in the newspaper and you'd get a lot of responses back, and that was how you went to market to find people, or you found someone you knew. These days, we know that the people who are most successful and who hire the best employees use multiple effective sourcing channels. Now, because I need you guys to do some work this afternoon, it's not all me, who can tell me where else besides the newspaper you can find employees or candidates? Seek, where else? LinkedIn, where else? Gumtree, yes. Depends what you're hiring. Gumtree is a very valid one. What, Facebook? LinkedIn advertising is a really big one now. Job boards, university boards. So you need to be using multiple channels, and they all have different targets. Gumtree is brilliant for some roles, not so good for others, but you do need to be using those multiple channels. So I would encourage you to do that. What I would say for you is the market is exceptionally tight at the moment. Now, what that means is there's not a lot of good applicants out there, and I wrote a whole article on this, or did some interview with the Huffington Post on this. But the reason why is that there is a shortage of candidates. So if we'd put out an executive assistant job ad 12 months ago, we would have got 50 to 60 applications, of which 20 were hard to choose by. We'll put that exact ad out now, we'll get 20, of which 2 are worthwhile. So if you are recruiting, don't have really long recruitment processes, because they're gone. By the time you get back to them, your competitors have got them. So be really careful, and you need to be much better at recruiting so that candidate has a lovely candidate experience and they're more likely to take your job rather than your job. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do there. The second one is you need to know how to do 3 interviews. One is a technical interview. Can they do the job? Do they have the skills to be a broker? The second one is a behavioural interview. Past behaviour indicates future performance. So if I put George in a situation and I explore it and I probe down and I find out what George did in that situation, he will most likely behave in exactly the same way when I make him do that for me in my business. So it's a great technique. You need to learn it, but it's worthwhile learning. The next one is culture. And when I talk about culture, I'm talking about the business culture for your business. You guys are so lucky. In many cases here, you get to determine the culture of your business. You haven't inherited it because you got a job. You actually get to decide your culture. And it's a really important one. There's some great questions to identify cultural fit. Things like, tell me about your favourite job. Why was it your favourite job? What did you love working about there? The next one is good people know good people. You need to encourage them, though, to think about it. So make sure you have referral programs that says, hey, if you can find me someone who can do this role, I'm going to give you a red balloon voucher, or I'm going to pay you a Star Search fee of $3,000 because that's a lot cheaper. And guess what? When people refer people in, they've got a vested interest in it. They need to make it work for them. And secondly, the employee who's coming in is going to know a lot more about your business because they've been shepherded into the business. The other one here is reference checks. No, actually, before I go to reference checks, I'm going to go to Harrison's. Harrison's is a psychometric assessment that we use in our business that our clients absolutely love. Put your hand up if you think you're a fabulous interviewer. Who? Anyone? Got 1. Thank you for being brave. 2. 3, a few, but hey, there were a lot of people who didn't put their hands up. So why our clients love Harrison's is it actually matches you to the job. So what it says is, I do a test, it's a psychometric 20-minute online, and they have mapped over 6,500 jobs, and it says, is Natasha a match to being an accountant? I would have about a 10% suitability index, and then it would list all the reasons and the traits why I would not be good at that job. And the reason why I love Harrison's is you've probably heard of DISCs and Myers-Briggs. Well, on Myers-Briggs, am I an extrovert or introvert? Not hard, is it? Where Harrison's actually maps you to the job. So guess what? It not only shows, and our clients like it because it actually confirms they picked the right person, but also when you bring them into your business and you manage them, you actually know how to manage them effectively. But once you've brought them into the business, you can actually point them to their strengths. Or if you have to get them to do something that you don't think they're good at, or you know they're not good at because of their Harrison's, you can reevaluate what you think they're going to do, how they're going to be able to do that, or provide additional support so they do it really well. So reference checks. Everybody must do reference checks. It really frightens me how many people are prepared to let someone into their business without doing one. And I've heard it all before. They're just going to give me their friends. Why should I do the reference check? You need to be smarter about it. When you're interviewing them, you actually need to say, and when you worked for ABC Bank, who did you report into there? What was their name? What was the role? And at this organisation, who did you report into there? And if those names aren't listed down on the referees of choice, then it's already fishy. So you need to do reference checks. The other one is you need to do background checks. Background checks are things like credit checks, police checks, confirmation of where they lived, confirmation of academics. Quick one back on India. When we were in India, because the recruitment process was so big, a lot of the background checks hadn't been done by the time we started these guys, and a lot of them were senior managers, and they were doing great work, and it was determined that their academics were actually faked, and they were all fired because the core value of the business that we were in was integrity, and they all had to be let go. So you must do background checks. It's a really important one, especially if they're touching money. If those employees have got anything to do of my client base, and these are the 10% that are willing to admit it, over 10% of them have experienced employee fraud. One to the tune of $180,000 who was doing payroll, who was actually her friend and had siphoned it all off, having lovely trips overseas. And the last one and the other tip I would give you here is when you bring someone in for an interview, ask them to bring their driver's license or their passport. 2 reasons. One is identity theft. You don't know you're actually interviewing the person who they say they are. And the other one is you have to check right to work status. The onus is on you and the fine is on you if you don't do it. I just wanted to share a recent development in this area, Facebook. I would guess that probably 80% of people in this room are on Facebook. Would that be about right? Well, we had a candidate that was going for a corporate travel role. He had passed the assessment recruitment process with flying colours. They thought he was wonderful. And he was working with a managing director and an office of 6 women. Well, guess what the 6 women did when he walked out the door? Was they quickly Facebooked him. I think we call it Facebook stalking these days. So they Facebooked him. And unfortunately for him, he didn't realise that his private settings, his settings were marked public. And the women were able to see in the office a whole lot of very inappropriate conversations about female genitalia. And we had to rescind that offer. And he was mortified because he didn't realise they were public. But there were 2 reasons they couldn't get him to go to work. Because one, the women realised how he thought about women and didn't think that was appropriate. And the second reason, he was going to be working for a very famous person, which I won't say. And there was no way that we could risk having that brand identified or that come out with that piece of information. So the interesting thing here is legislation hasn't caught up with some of that. So you could argue that was a privacy risk for him, but unfortunately, as I say, legislation isn't quite there yet. So how do you manage better? And you do need to think about it. These are your team, your babies. These are the people you want to help you grow your business. A couple of things you need to do really well in this space. People don't leave businesses, they leave leaders. You guys need to get good at this. First thing is induction. I just had 2 new employees start at Employee Matters this last week. They did a 3-hour session with me, one-on-one, going through an orientation program. And then they have 16 hours of pre-recorded Zoom. We just record them on Zoom that they need to go through. And then they're buddied up with someone, and we do check-in calls with them regularly. And we set them up for success. As I said with that example before, we usually put a bot on a seat and expect them to learn through osmosis. Your employees are at the greatest risk of leaving you within the first 3 months. And it's very expensive to get them replaced. The second thing I'd like to talk to you here about is performance management. You'll have heard a lot of rhetoric in the papers where a lot of the professional services firms have actually thrown out performance appraisals. I think they've gone too far the other way. I think you do need to do performance appraisals, probably every 6 months, and you've got to answer 4 questions. Write these down because these will save you bacon. What did you do well this last 6 months? What can you do better? What training do you need? And where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And just have that conversation, but ask them to self-assess. So give them the opportunity. Yes, you've got a question?
Do you have a slide for those 4 questions?
No, contact me later. I'll give them to you later.
Great.
So it's really important that you do those performance appraisals, but have informal conversations. And that brings me to another point. Who has a formal communication strategy with their team, their employees? Anyone? Actually have documented when, how, why, what you're going to communicate to your employees. You need to do that. You need to communicate regularly. You want them on the journey with you. So, and there's so much technology around at the moment to help us do that. One of the things I use is a little tool called Voxer, and it's like a walkie-talkie. So every week, my team's remote. We either work from the client site or our homes. Got a big bunch of very senior HR people who want to balance their lives. So I'll send out a Voxer message, and I send out a 7-minute message that they can listen to when they want to, and they can find out basically what's happening in the business, what's in the pipe, what work we've won. I always shout out somebody who's done a great job, and they love it. But then on top of that, we have other built-in mechanisms of the way we communicate with our team, and it's really important. The second thing I'd say here is one of my bugbears. I really don't like the term staff. And the reason why I don't like staff is I see it as very them and us. It's very superior. It's quite blue collar. Again, we're in an age where you can call yourself whatever you want. We give to B1G1, which is buy one, give one. And our team member who does that, I call her the Chief Giving Officer. I can call her whatever I want. You can too. But there's no I in team. And you guys need to think about better titles, and you want your team on the journey with you rather than not on the journey with you. So work out what you can call people. And your clients will resonate with it. I just joined a new accountant, and he has a product called Going Under the Hood. And he looked at all my financials, and that was part of it, and it was a fixed price deal. And I thought that was fantastic because I totally got what that was. And then the other thing I would say here is your employees go through good times and bad, like your business is going to go through good times and bad. And it's really important as you as a business owner and a manager that you're able to support them. We had one instance many years ago where we had one of our team tragically commit suicide. And if that wasn't bad enough, in his suicide note, he actually shared that part of the reason why he committed suicide was that he was being performance managed at work. And what happened as a result of that was that we suddenly had a bit of a witch hunt on for the manager who was doing the performance management very legally, very legitimately, with all the support in the world, but everybody was going after him. And so we had to very quickly try and sort that situation and bring it back under control. And not long after that, we actually had a very senior associate partner get a brain tumour, and he was gone within 3 weeks. And there was an enormous amount of shock from that. So how did we deal with that? We used a system called an employee assistance program. It's very big in corporate land. You can get access to it in small businesses, and I would encourage you to do so. 38% of employees at the moment that are working for your business are experiencing financial stress. 1 in 5 people in Australia at the moment have mental health issues. Stress is on the increase, and you as business owners actually have a duty of care to provide a workplace that isn't too stressful. So it's really important that you provide that support. And often your employees rather come to you for that support, but you're not a trained counsellor, you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but you want to give them some support. So I think it's really important. So you as managers, you need to work on your leadership skills. So when I arrived in the UK on the, check the date out, the 4th of September 2001, I promptly made 50 people redundant, and I was known as the Angel of Death. Not particularly good when I was single at the time, and part of the reason I was going to the UK was hopefully to find someone to spend my life with. That did happen, but it was a lot later. But I was known as the Angel of Death, and most of the time when I met these people, this was the first time and I had to fire them. And what I realised was I actually had a skill. Whilst it wasn't pleasant, I could do it well. And it's one of those things where, you know, I was chatting to someone before. Some people, actually one girl got up and gave me a hug and a kiss, and she said, "You've just paid for my MBA." She was already going. I just paid for it. And then others who were absolutely devastated, who didn't go home and tell their wife for 2 or 3 months that they'd actually been made redundant because they were so connected to their workplace and what they did. So put your hand up here if anyone has ever had to fire anyone. Keep it up if you did it legally. That you wouldn't have failed the harsh, unjust or unreasonable test. There's a few. Keep your hand up or put it back up if you actually enjoyed firing someone. There's a few sadists in the room. Why did you enjoy it? Pardon?
I got a kick out of it.
You got a kick out of it. I had somebody yes, you enjoyed it too?
There's been times where I haven't, but there's definitely been times where they've had the opportunity to improve, and
they didn't.
It's the best thing for everyone.
And they might thank you for it as well.
I got invited to their wedding after.
You did it well. You did it very well. I did that a couple of weeks ago in a speaking gig, and this woman shot up her hand, and she was the only one with her hand up. And I said, "Why did you enjoy it?" And she said, "Because they had sex on my desk." So you can get some sort of enjoyment out of it. But on a more serious note, guess who are the most people who are turning up to Fair Work Commission at the moment for unfair dismissals? Small business. Guess what they do? You can get fines of up to 6 months' pay and or reinstatement. Who wants them back? And guess what? If they're older, you're going to get them back because they're going to have less chance of finding another job. So you need to get good at firing people. But what happens is the reason why you want to fire them is legitimate, and they use a reasonableness test. So if I ask the 10 people in these first 2 rows, was it reasonable for this gentleman to fire that person? You'd probably go, yeah, actually, I think that was fair and reasonable. But where you come unstuck is you do it illegally. So things like you don't give them a support person, you don't give them an opportunity to respond, you don't document it effectively. So there's a whole lot of things you need to do there. The big one is, and write this one down, no one should ever get fired without seeing it coming. You should absolutely say to them, if I don't see a performance improvement with you by next Wednesday, and here are the KPIs you need to meet, your role is at risk of being terminated. He has to know when he walks out that door that when he turns up next Wednesday, there is a big chance he might be out the door. One story I'll share with you on this. I was invited to investigate a situation. This guy, let's call him Hugh Hefner, because it was fancy dress. He was dressed as Hugh Hefner. I think it went to his head. But anyway, what happened? He was on a work conference. Imagine what happens on work conferences. You guys are all on notice, as Mark said, scurrying down the door at 8 o'clock at night, in the morning. So he was on a work conference. The evening started well. He seemed to be enjoying himself. He used to dance for Michael Jackson, so he's pretty good at it. And but he got a little overexcited, and then he started crawling around on all 4s, pretending to be a lion. And then he threw a couple of girls on the dance floor like this and gyrated all over them. And then he went up to his boss at the time and stuck his tongue down his throat. But he hadn't come out yet, the other guy, so this was a little bit of a problem. And then he bit him on the cheek. And then somebody decided it might be time to escort Hugh back to his room, and they did. And when Hugh woke up the next morning, it was like nothing had happened. So what did we do? Well, we were called in to do an investigation because he is innocent until proven guilty. So we had to do an investigation and find out what was the problem with Hugh and what had happened. And basically, on the balance of probability, it was determined that he had done all of those things and his employment was terminated. And there were 2 reasons for that. One, it was against the code of conduct. Remember I told you it was important to have policies? That is why. Hugh, here's our code of conduct. You can't go around sticking your tongue down people's throats and biting people. And 2, there were some women who were quite frightened. I don't think the gentleman was that fussed, but the women were quite frightened for their safety. So it's really important that you know, and if that happens, you need to work out and quickly react to it. Don't let it fester. You need to run an investigation. There is a formal way to do that. I would encourage you to get somebody independent to do that investigation, because otherwise you can get yourself into a whole lot of trouble, because then you may fail that unfair dismissal test. Did you give him an opportunity to respond? If you suspended him, did you have it in your contract that you could suspend him? So you need to do a whole lot of stuff like that. So your greatest desire, I imagine every business owner in this room wants to grow their business more quickly with happy and productive employees, and very much a high-performing, low-maintenance team. And you can get it. I'm not talking about nirvana here. It does exist. So I don't know how I've gone for time. I think I'm about the half an hour mark. I tell you what, it's Q&A time, and I'm a lot cheaper than a lawyer. So who has some questions for me? Yes? Great question. Probation still exists. You can't do probation any more than 6 months, and there's a reason for that. In unfair, you know how I was talking about unfair dismissal? Was the dismissal harsh, unjust, or unreasonable? You can't take an unfair dismissal complaint against your boss unless you have, remember I mentioned over 15? If you've got over 15 employees, you must have been there 6 months. If you've got under 15, they must have been there 12 months. Encourage you to do probation. It's a try before you buy kind of scenario. The good news is that if your normal notice period is 2 weeks, you can terminate someone on their probation and just give them a week's notice. So, and often I would walk them out the door fairly quickly. And I would suggest if you're in that situation, don't hang about, pay them out, don't be a miser. They're not going to be happy. You're at your greatest risk of having some sabotage at that point. Just cut your losses and let them go. Unless you're very confident they're going to be okay. So yes, do put probation in and make sure it's in your employment contract. Yes?
What if you've got an employee that's really poor performance, but you've done nothing about it for a couple of years?
Start doing something about it, but I have another quick and dirty way to do it. So you can either start to do something about it, and that's what a lot of employers get frustrated with. I said there was a process you need to follow. There's some time involved in that to do it properly, but you can do a short circuit process, and what that is, you have a mutual separation discussion. And you say, George, I know and you know, this hasn't been working for the last couple of months. I know and you know, and this is under without prejudice conversation, so off the record. I know and you know, I haven't managed this very well either. But what about, you know, you should probably go. I know you should go. I'm going to pay you some go-away money. You sign a deed of release and go quickly and quietly, and that'll be the end of it. So you get them to sign a deed of release. Now you have to pay go-away money, so it's more expensive. So you need to work out if George was going to take you to Fair Work, his maximum payout is 6 months, and it's going to take him 12 to 18 months to get that. Or you can give him 3 months and he goes now. Now, Fair Work don't like that because it's not very nice to the employee, but as a business owner, that's a commercial reality that you might want to do it that way. So you can do it, and I would encourage you to do it. You guys can't afford non-performers. In big business, if 10% of your workplace isn't doing too well, yes, there's an impact. If you've got 5 in your team and George is one of them, George is not performing, it's going to hurt. And guess what? People don't like you because you're not a good manager and you're not strong enough to do anything about it. So they don't respect you, and they're frustrated because George gets away with it all the time and they're carrying all of George's workload. Most business owners will go, I don't want to get rid of George because everyone's going to hate me. But actually everyone goes, thank God you did that, about time. You know, yay. So it's worth doing. Other questions? Yes.
I think in this industry I hear a lot. I think a lot of people are considering contract style commission-based employees. So there's a big difference between employee and contractor, but I think the group had from just a little bit of understanding.
Yeah.
When does a contractor a contract?
It's a great question. I'll repeat it. So the question was, this industry is probably considering going into some independent contractor arrangements, and it would be helpful for the audience if we understood a little bit more about the difference between an employee and an independent contractor. My arms, look, every time somebody talks about independent contractors, my arms go on, hairs go on edge. There's a reason for that. It's the riskiest way to hire someone. Fair Work don't like it. ATO don't like it. What's the reason for that? Well, ATO don't like it because independent contractors don't pay tax straight away. There's no pay as you go. When they finish their year, they pay their tax. So they miss out on a whole lot of tax. Fair Work don't like it because they think you as employers are practicing something called sham contracting. Sham contracting is when it looks like a duck, it smells like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's actually a duck, it's an employee. But you are putting them under an independent contractor arrangement because you're trying to avoid paying long service leave, annual leave and sick leave. Now, a couple of tests for you, and the risk with this one is they have to meet all the tests, so I can't go through all of them, but let me give you a couple. Does the employee wear your uniform? Does the employee supply their own stuff, as in their own computer, and so on? Does the employee look to your clients as if they're an employee of yours, or do they publicly actually advertise their business? And the big one for me is twofold. One is, as an independent contractor, they don't have to do it your way. They can do it whenever they want, whatever way. You have no control over the way they perform the work. And guess what? They can even outsource that work to someone else without your permission. So they're just a few of the tests that you need to meet, and you need to meet all of them. And it's called sham contracting. So what's the risk, and why do my hairs go on edge when people ask me about it? If it is deemed to be sham contracting, you are in breach of the Fair Work Act. That breach exposes you to a fine of $54,000 plus back pay of entitlement. So if that fellow's been working for you for 3 years, he gets paid back 3 times 4 weeks annual leave. He probably took 5 days a year sick leave, so he gets 3 times that. And he's been earning long service leave, which you haven't been accruing for. And you've got to pay that back as well. So I would strongly recommend, look, the devil's in the detail, and it's really important that you get some legal advice on that. But I would always err on caution, go for a casual, much less risk, rather than an independent contractor. Yes, up the back. Great question. The question was, do non-compete clauses work? In the past, I would give you that they weren't held up and they weren't very good. They are absolutely holding them now. There was just a recent case I read on the plane up here, and I think it was SAI Global. A guy had resigned. He was in the sales team. He'd put his little doobie danger in the computer and downloaded all the files and got caught. And he's just been fined $194,000 personally to him. And the reason for that, and that's a big company, but the reason for that is you've got to protect your blood, sweat and tears. It's like employment contracts. I say they're not for when things are going well, they're for when things aren't going so well. And you want to protect them from stealing your clients, you want to protect your IP, and you want to protect your employees from them pinching them. So absolutely, they are being held, but if it's not in your contract, poor form, but not illegal. So make sure it's in your contract. Make sure you have a watertight non-compete clause. Especially, it needs to be reasonable. You can't have a restraint of trade where George can't earn a living anymore, but it needs to be reasonable. For how long? Yes, it's usually up to 12 months. But the other thing is, and this is going back to my financial services days, if you want to get really clever about it, you put them on gardening leave and you pay them to stay out of the market for 6 months, but that's expensive. Not everyone can afford to do that. Yes. Yeah. Sorry? Who said that? Sorry. Just Jeans? About SAI Global, that one? Okay, I'll have a look. I'm not familiar with that case. I'd be very surprised. I think that what I'm seeing as a trend is that people are much more protective of their IP, and business owners have a right. They've invested a lot of money. I'm building a piece of software at the moment that will help small businesses and help M&A and acquisitions and assessing a business. And I'm putting a hell of a lot of money into it, and I want to protect that and do so accordingly under my contracts. Any other questions? Yes?
In terms of policies, what else? You talked about code of conduct, you talked about company values. What other stuff would you put in place?
Yeah, look, the main one, workplace health and safety, is the one that it's mandatory, you must have it. The other ones that are worth having a policy about are sexual harassment and bullying and equal opportunity, and the reason for that is that legislation covers that, and you must provide a safe place of work. The other one is a drug and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol and people turning up drunk and affected by drugs is a growing importance in our society. They're probably the ones that I would say you should have. An IT policy is another one. Social media policy is another one. Grievance policy is a big one. So what happens if George and Fred aren't getting on and George feels that Fred is doing something to affect him in the workplace? Then a grievance policy enables George to raise a complaint and it be dealt with in a mature and a professional way so that it doesn't escalate and get out of control. So they would be, I've got a list of them on my website, so if you want to download that, you can get that. Any other questions? Yes?
It's a two-part question.
Yep.
So, we've come to a recent issue where the employee got very close on a friendship level with Minnesota, and it completely fell apart, fraud, all that sort of thing, so it had to go our ways. So, what's your advice on small business owners separating work and personal with employee? And number two, what would be your advice on communicating that to the rest of the staff?
Yep.
Is there any do's and don'ts around that?
Yeah, great question. The question was situation where the boss and an employee got a little bit too friendly, but then it all went foul and there was some fraud involved. And the second part of the question was, how do you communicate that to the rest of your team? I think as a business owner, one of the best bits of advice I can give you is your team all the research shows your team want authentic leaders. So I don't turn up to my team going, hey, I know everything. Come to me, I'm orator, what's that? From the Oracle, Matrix or whatever. I don't say that. I actually say, I don't know everything. And guess what? You know how I might sound like I know a lot about what I've talked about this afternoon? I'm not doing it. I'm not in the trenches day to day. So the depth of my understanding because of the role I'm playing is changing. My team know the detail. But as a business owner, it's really important that you develop relationships with your team, that you understand what motivates them. You understand why they come to work. You understand what they want from you and your business in order to do stuff. But there is always going to be that little barrier that you need to put there that's professional and safety. One of our clients had one of his team tell him he loved her. That was very awkward because he didn't love her. But then he's gone on to love someone else in the team and have 2 babies. And that causes enormous problems because everyone thinks Emma gets special treatment. So that's what you need to, so you do need to, there's something about what you shouldn't do in your own woods, and I would suggest that you need to keep some barriers. I know. Yeah, no, friendship is the same. Like, again, as a business owner, they're going to think that person's getting special treatment. Yeah, I would keep some barriers. I would always keep some barriers there, and there might come a time when one of you need to move on. In terms of communicating that, do you mean the fallout from it?
Yeah, so
yeah, I think you need to communicate it as at a high level on a need-to-know basis, but you need to, if you don't tell them, they're going to make it up. So it comes back to that communication strategy. We're very transparent with our team. We tell our team a lot, but you need to work out what's right for you and what you're willing to share or not. Anyone else? Yes, up the back. Just make sure I heard that. Was that about volunteer organisations? Do they follow the same legislation? They do. Workers' comp, for example, has to cover volunteers, casuals, permanents, and so on. So it is a bit trickier with your volunteers, and it needs to be very clearly a volunteer relationship. When I started my business, one of my team that still works for me now worked for me for 3 months as a volunteer to help me get my business off the ground. And now she's a fully paid employee. But normally it's in a not-for-profit circumstance, or it's mum and dad helping you out in the business. That would be okay to be a volunteer, but it is a tricky area and you need to be a bit careful with it. Anyone else? Great. All right. I have written a book called From Hire to Fire and Everything in Between. I wrote it for business owners like yourselves so that you had, and when I wrote it, I had a dog-eared post-it note on my desk to say I wanted it to become a dog-eared companion for business owners, so you could go, oh, I need to have one of those difficult conversations. Let me look up page 67, or I need to make someone redundant. What do I need to do? It sells at Dymocks for $24.95. I've done a special deal on behalf of FBAA today to sell it to you guys for $20. I've only bought a small amount, so if you'd like to get a signed copy of the book for just $20, then I'm going to be out at reception when you leave this afternoon, and I'll be selling books out there. So if you'd like to get in touch with me, www.employeematters.com.au. My name's Natasha Hawker. Thank you for your attention this afternoon. You've been a great audience, and remember, your employees really do matter.